The Elon thing really pissed them off. It was such a lit fantasy, but it was true. And they're just like, how dare this guy do this?
Well, Elon knows many things, but he doesn't know Wisconsin. He doesn't know the sort of pleasant fatalism of the people of Wisconsin, and also their massive inferiority complex to anyone outside of the state of Wisconsin. I'm sorry to certain people in my life. All right, let's start the show.
Okay, got it.
Okay, greetings, everybody. Hello, it's Black Monday, April 7th, 2025. You're listening to the Menaker Moneyline podcast. All the money heads out there, we're talking deals, stocks, and global economic meltdown. Couldn't be happier because we're joined today by our old pal, Dave Weigel. Dave, welcome back to the show.
Yo, good to be here.
Look, obviously, I'm not, as I've said many times on the show before, I'm not a money file. So the thought of touching money holds no appeal to me. But I would like to talk about some of the political reaction and sort of the political scenario involved in Trump's tariffs and the stock market crash taking place today. Dave, I think probably the best indication of where things are at occurred around, 9:30 or 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time today, when a man named who goes by Walter Bloomberg on Twitter caused a $4 trillion market correction by posting that Trump was considering rescinding the tariffs for 90 days. And then the market saw a huge jump after that, only to crash down again because when people realized he doesn't actually work for Bloomberg, his name is Walter Bloomberg. But I guess I want to start is in DC, in politics right now, is a consensus beginning to form over how serious Donald Trump is about these tariffs? Are there people still kind of bargaining with the reality that maybe these are temporary, or that they're a negotiating stance, or is it beginning to harden into a reality that's going to have to be dealt with?
In Washington, I think people caught on faster that this was real. It's really everywhere else. It's everywhere that money managers live, and everywhere that CNBC live, which I guess is New Jersey, where they just said, yeah, this is a deal maker. This is not going to be real. We're going to cover this, and then he's going to cut a deal with somebody, and they're going to move the jobs back. And this was the week or so that you saw people in that zone say, wait a minute, he might mean this thing he said at literally every single rally since he got into politics 10 years ago. He might actually want to do that. He might having replaced Steve Mnuchin with a bunch of factotums who just do whatever he says. He might actually want to use that power and have the guys who do whatever he says implement this stuff and defend it. That's what happened the last week. And it's just really annoying to anyone who covered Trump at all for 10 years that they're so surprised. But the Walter Bloomberg thing, which is really funny, by far the funniest market crash correction thing I've ever seen. It's even dumber because it started with Fox News, which contains some of those people who said this is fun and all, but surely he should negotiate and not do tariffs, right? They use their interviews often to get these guys off the ledge, and they had Kevin Hassett on saying, hey, could the president maybe pause this for 90 days, which came out of nowhere. There is no one discussing a 90-day pause. Fox has tried to get him to talk about it, and he gave a non-answer. And then someone wrote this up on the Bloomberg terminal, the news, which I used to work for, a quick headline that could move money. Somebody said that he was considering a 90-day pause, which is wrong. Walter Bloomberg, who is not just a guy, but a guy with a weird Russian actor as his avatar. No one knows who Walter Bloomberg really is. He's just one of those guys who bought a blue check so he could post.
He's been around for a very long time.
Oh,
He's like if Kyle Becker was not a Democratic Jedi. He's one of those news aggregator accounts, but for financial news. And as far as I can tell, he's slightly more respectable than Zero Hedge, but not by much.
Yeah, he doesn't do the weird essay posts that Zero Hedge will do sometimes. Yeah.
If he has any opinions about what frequency classical music should be at, he's kept them to himself. But he's this is his most high profile bung up. But it shows the import of aggregator accounts like that, who oftentimes are literally just some fucking guy in this case. Speaking of the guys who were trying to rationalize this as a negotiating tactic, the money guys, I think I saw the last instance of anyone trying to convince themselves of that at 2 a.m. last night. I saw Bill Ackman say, well, it's a negotiating tactic for people to think you're crazy sometimes. He's getting like 50 preemptive margin calls. All his creditors are calling him. Jamie Dimon is about to do the raid on his condo. And he's like, I mean, there's a chance this might not happen.
And even the whole Walter Bloomberg panic was, it was just like people are starving on the Snowpiercer train. There's a rumor of that food showed up. And they said, "Oh, I heard there's a sandwich over there," and they all ran to get it. Like CNBC would have said, "Can we go with this headline?" They couldn't. It was a fake headline. They all went with it because they all are. Like, there has to be some method. We can't have consigned the country for 4 years to a guy who's just going to keep doing tariffs randomly, right? There has to be something smart at, right? There has to be something. They're just trying to talk themselves into this.
The thing that has particularly driven me crazy about all that before, and it was happening the week in the lead up to this, especially. And It was sort of a conversation between finance guys and pundits who were more on the pro-tariff side. And it was basically debating the merits of, the dignity of being like a fucking barista versus working in a factory. And I've already pointed this out, how much I fucking love this when it's, a bunch of guys who have blogs and like someone who wrote a novel 15 years ago that was well received being like, you don't want to be a fucking gay guy and work in an office, right? But as things have heated up, and especially since Liberation Day, there's been this, incredibly incessant debate about the merits of offshoring, the import of having some production capacity and having some supply lines that are at least in North America. But you might as well be debating whether there's more dignity in being a waiter or a fucking sorcerer. Because they're not going to, they're going to reshow, we're going to create 10 million fucking new middle class manufacturing jobs with a government that says they will not deficit spend on anything except, like, I don't know, defense, and with no central planning, and private industry is, I mean, they're just going to be stockpiling cash for the next like fucking 18 to 36 months. How is that going to fucking happen? Like, it's driven me fucking insane. Well, I think now people are maybe going to realize that those are not coming back, but what a real shit coding on the concept of reshoring. Like, Jesus Christ.
I mean, like, I was going to say, like, it seems to be there's like two sort of contradictory stances about what these tariffs are and what they're intended to do. And they're like, a lot of times they come from, sort of Republican intelligentsia and media figures, but also sometimes from the White House itself. And then, like, the first one, I think we've easily dispensed with. Like, I don't think there is much indication that this is a negotiating tactic, that they're a madman strategy to play hardball. The more serious one is one advanced by Lutnick, among others, this idea that that these tariffs are going to, like, remake the global economy, remake the American economy, and that they're going to compel companies essentially to reshore manufacturing in this country. Now, Dave, you make a great point about how, like, Fox News and CNBC anchors attempt to kind of cajole them back into a kind of broader economic consensus. And the follow-up questions to Lutnick will ask him about labor costs associated with building iPhones in America. And he said, not to worry about that, as robots and automation will be doing most of the work. So, I mean, this is another contradictory. This is another, like, contradictory thing about, like, well, okay, so the factories are coming back to America, but the jobs aren't. Like, what is your sense about, like, of the kind of the idea that this will strengthen the hand of, like, the American worker? Like, what is the White House and sort of Republican line on that currently at the moment?
Oh, the White House Republican line is all unified. It is just Trump is right. Mike Johnson is just an appendage of Trump. Says he's right about this. He's right about everything. We need to follow him down that hole. But you're right. Every time there's pushback in these interviews, and it's kind of a powerless feeling you get in not in DC, but if you're in Congress, you have no power to influence this. It is just whether CNBC hosts ask the right question or whether Andrew Ross Sorkin asked the right thing at DealBook. Like, did you get him to say this thing that will move the markets? And yeah, they can't explain it because what was Hillbilly Elegy comes out 2015, 2016. one of the premises of that is that you can't save what happened to the hollowed out middle America because it's too late and because of automation. It's not just offshoring. Nobody could say jobs come back now, please, with more tariffs. And now the policy is, well, maybe you could do tariffs, and maybe the factories come back. But they've not said, here's what they've done is a little bit what Biden was doing, which didn't work, of saying we just had a big announcement. Tim Cook and a bunch of other people said they're going to invest a bunch of money into factories. So if you live in Northeast Michigan and you want to work in a factory, good news, it's coming. You live in Wisconsin, good news. There's this Foxconn company is going to come in and they're going to have jobs, and we're going to do the 1950s again, except without unions. And they don't deliver on it. You were just saying what the reality is yeah, they're talking about automation and AI. While all this is happening, they're also fantasizing about how to get like every service worker that can be automated out of that industry, and also say, and the jobs will come back. So if you've been doing crunching numbers for the VA or Department of Education, don't worry. At some point, there's going to be an Apple factory, and at some point, you could apply for a job there for much less money installing pins in iPhones.
Yeah.
When? We won't tell you how. TBD.
Dave, that is something I wanted to bring up, not just specifically with the tariffs, but with seemingly, I guess you could charitably call it a grand strategy of the second Trump administration. Editor Bentham, Josh, has also pointed this out, but the sheer brandedness of it all.
Yeah.
Not only is he insistent on the idea that everyone is into this idea of achieving a 1950s production economy without, Chinese levels of central planning and, expenditures that don't really go past the tens of billions. There's also this idea of like, well, that idea is part of a pastiche. So whether it fully works out in the next 2 years or not, which it won't, it will take 10 years. People will appreciate it because it's part of this grand strategy that hinges on my foreign policy accomplishments. Mm-hmm. With Brandon, that was things like AUKUS. He expected people to give him goodwill on the, in 10 years, it's going to be 1957 again. But in the meantime, I will enjoy waiting for that because of your incredible accomplishments in, getting New Zealand to host a nuclear submarine. That's a huge deal for me. With Trump, it's, I tried to end the war in Ukraine, but not really. Right. He took the whole Brandon act and said, what if I can deliver less?
Yeah, the Brandon version was just, here's some tax credits if you build your chip factory in Tulsa, which he got enough buy-in on that, and that's not insane. Like, is the company going to take a huge tax benefit and free money to build some stuff here and not Taiwan? Yeah, not all of it, but some. But it was more the threat of, what if China just takes over Taiwan, then you're fucked. And they said, good idea. If you give us some incentives, we'll build. That kind of, everyone agreed with that, but even Republicans agreed with that. Trump will occasionally talk about repealing chips, but he doesn't really mean it. He hates Biden like he hated Obama. But this is that kind of neo-imperial version of that, right? We won't need to do it because we'll take over rare earth minerals in Ukraine and in Greenland, and we'll have a bunch of money coming in. And once we rebalance the world economy so we're making stuff and trading less, we're going to have real prosperity. And not to repeat myself, but also AI is going to replace all the jobs. That's the part of it I still don't know how to put all this together. But they're like, we're going to do it, but we're also going to have 5 robots doing it.
Dave, I've tried to look into that because it's so contradictory, and it just so like it is just sort of like uppers mania thinking at that point. But the most coherent sketching out of that plan is basically that like the middle class jobs that will only require at most like an associate's degree will be basically that you know the way that Fred Flintstone will look at a brontosaurus crushing steel beams for a construction job. Yeah. You would do that, but for a robot. And that can staff 75 million middle class jobs that all pay $98,000 a year.
Well, it's a living, ain't it?
Felix, I saw someone like an exchange of someone who was like, no, this is going to be great. It's going to bring all the factories back. And then someone asked them like, okay, like what are they going to pay? Are you going to be working in this factory? And he said, no, I'm going to own the factory.
Yeah. You remember those conversations of like, what will your job be after the revolution?
Yeah.
I'm going to teach
Welcome
everyone
back.
poetry. Yeah.
Yeah. No, Felix, you posted the other day that this reminded you of the thread where an anarchist tried to explain how they would produce pharmaceuticals after the revolution. And the answer was befriend someone who's good at chemistry.
I so well like someone found that was a great one I'd forgotten about, but that was taken from Trump saying, what are supply lines? Who needs those? We don't need supply lines to do manufacturing. And there was a specific Chaz era discussion where someone was asking, okay, how are you going to make pharmaceuticals without specialization? And the person said, that sounds stupid. It's something like I'd have more fun destroying. And that seems to be the Trump policy with supply lines.
Well, Dave, among the Republican intelligentsia, like there's like a number of different strategies for trying to like get out ahead of bad economic news, metabolize this new shift in the economy, and sort of explain it to people. And like I think the most detailed one was done by Oren Cass, but I noticed it was a long post, and it like in his attempt to try to like make the tariffs policy like make sense or seem well considered or something, it seemed to me that it was just like a really long like Rube Goldberg device of assumptions about what he thinks Trump is going to do or not do. And like to me, like this just like all the people trying to figure out like what's the logic behind this. It just recalls to me the famous line from Duck Soup, off quoted by Slavoj Žižek, where Groucho is defending Chico in a court, and he says, "Your Honor, my client looks like an idiot. He talks like an idiot. But don't let that fool you. He really is an idiot." And like, when I think about like what's the logic here? I mean, I think Chris, I think you got it really right on the nose over the weekend in that like throughout his entire career, Trump truly understands paying for anything as being robbed, and like his understanding of a trade deficit, i.e., the United States buys more from the rest of the world than we sell, is like the rest of the world stealing from us, and he thinks that we're being ripped off.
It's kind of beautiful in its simplicity. It's like, well, we've sent the money to Canada and they send us lumber, but then they have our money. Where'd the money go?
All we have is this fucking lumber.
Yeah.
If you look at the chart that he brought out, so many of those countries are just they clearly, people pointed out that they probably did this with ChatGPT or something. And for most of it, it seems like they pick countries where the trade deficit ratio is the most out of whack, as opposed to like, who do we have the most like volumetrically skewed trade deficit? That's of course in there, China, obviously. But with a lot of those countries where it's like, it's 99% us buying something and 1% us selling something to us. It's
like Cambodia, for instance.
Right. It'll be these countries that sell us textiles, or in the case of stuff that is aggravating Elon and causing him to inch away, these countries in Africa that export like, one rare earth metal that you need to make like a type of steel alloy if you are a defense contractor, or perhaps you manufacture electric cars. And it's all these situations where we're getting like the textiles or whatever materials for like a fucking song. And they're literally too poor to buy anything from us, because what would they buy? A fucking F-35? But they look at it and they go, we're being fucked here. The most instructive thing, the most instructive political debate, the two most instructive political thinkers. One, Demonius X, the most instructive conservative thinker of our time. Second, the great Grubhub debates where they say someone is trying to screw you by making you walk an extra 150 feet to pick up your order. When someone sells you something and you pay them, the fact that they have your money means that they have gotten one over on you and you have to kill them.
Yes. While you live your life trying to get as much free time as possible, you're allowed to do that. Like, the point of your life is buy Fartcoin early so that you can make money off it. Record a podcast. Nothing wrong with podcasts. You know what I mean? Do your Rumble show. But everybody else should be working to the bone nonstop, just pouring sweat, like sweating faster than they can replenish it with Gatorade. If they're not doing that, they're bad Americans. But you need to be able to chill. Like this is what a prosperity is for. Someone else is going to do the pins and the iPhones. But they did the wrong thing. You got in really early on, which is the last one. The Trump one, that's not right anymore. I'm going to stick with Fartcoin. Fartcoin definitely went up.
Dave, just because you brought up Fartcoin and doing podcasts on Rumble, I have to share an image I saw yesterday with you guys that is going to stick with me for a while, which is I drove to the Ralph's to buy $20 worth of eggs or whatever, and I was in the parking lot and observing a guy in a Wall Street Bets t-shirt, like the cartoon of the blonde guy, sunglasses, Wall Street Bets t-shirt, having a very heated conversation on his cell phone that he then hung up and just sat down on the curb and put his head in his hands.
Oh man,
is this about the tariffs? I don't know, but it seemed
the AP stock photographers when you need them.
I mean, that is a wife phone call if I've ever heard one.
Oh man, like there's so many guys who are going through the John Fenderman Mr. Show sketch where he sues because he doesn't realize money goes away when you spend it. Like that's happening to millions of people this week.
Yeah.
There's only one thing I can blame, and that's the money itself. I didn't know how to spend this money. It didn't come with instructions or a manual. I didn't realize that if you exchanged it for property or services, that they would take it away for good. And that's just what they did.
Speaking of retail investors, I saw the best post Friday, and this was the greatest amount of equities ever purchased in one day by retail investors. And this Trump guy said, this was the greatest transfer of wealth between the 1% and the working class ever in history. And it's all because of Trump, which is, saying that before Black Monday too is like, well, this is the most money the 3-card Monte dealer has ever put up. This is the most he could ever stand to lose.
Look, going back to what I said, I'm no economic expert, so I can't tell how this is all going to shake out. Like if they hold, look, things will change. Of that, I'm certain. But like, as just an observer of politics and people who talk about politics, I think it's an interesting sign, like again, among sort of right-wing intellectuals and media figures, the line that they've adopted over the last couple of days, and I don't mean like the CNBC set. I mean the more esoteric of the sort of right-wing thinkers.
The acclaimed man, based alligator, all our guys.
And like it's a sign not so much about like about what they think is going to how this is all going to turn out. And my feeling is that they don't have a lot of confidence that this is going to end well for Trump, because the line that a lot of them are taking now is basically, what is money? What is prosperity? Like, you can lose all your money, but you're still alive. You still have love and family members. And it's just like they've adopted a strangely philosophical and sort of like, let's take the long view of history. And will this all turn out okay? I don't know. Ask me in 100 years.
It is funny. And like, look, I think it is counterintuitive to your own happiness to just remember every slight against you. But pretty much everyone that like yelled at us over treats is now they're now posting the Fight Club thing. You're not your fucking TV.
We're the all singing, all dancing crap of the world.
I mean, just that type of thing is so funny with this policy that, there's more to life than cheap goods, which like, yeah, I think, for our ideology, like if you want something that is beyond just like a prematurely born Medicare for all, that is sort of idealized public option, you do need to do some type of reshoring. There does need to be some national production capacity, and there does need to be something that sustains a middle class, right? But for this, it's just like the guy who said it's the greatest wealth transfer. No, you're not redistributing anything. You're just blowing it up.
Well, Felix, like
you're not trading your cheap goods for anything. You're just taking a shit on them and going, well, how do you like that? You didn't get anything.
Well, Felix, I think about that like in terms of like some of the reaction I've been seeing, I guess more on the sort of contrarian left with this idea that Trump is ending neoliberalism. And like, that's interesting to me because like,
doing what they did in Russia in the 90s.
Well, yeah, because like global free trade regimes are an important facet of neoliberalism, and it's one that the left has criticized. But in addition to global free trade, there's also extreme austerity, privatization, deregulation, and like a omnipresent police surveillance state, which they're tripling down on all four of those things at the same time that they're getting rid of the global free trade aspect of neoliberalism.
That is the specific thing that is also driving me nuts. This, like, I'm a vulgar, class. I just look at the economics of it. Don't care about this pronoun stuff. What austerity government? No, this is the thing you're supposed to be against, shithead.
Dave, though, I wanted to ask, like, what has been the reaction from Congress, from Democrats and Republicans? Because there's got to be some, like, a lot of old school Republicans or a lot of Republicans in maybe like a swing district that I'm sure are secretly quite upset about what the stock market is doing and what it looks like to their reelection. But I think an interesting thing that's like maybe like not talked about enough with this is that like all of these tariffs are being done under the aegis of a like national security emergency measure, which allows the White House to impose tariffs on every country in the world. But like specifically, what is the national security emergency that they're referring to? And is there any appetite in Congress for clawing back a power that is explicitly given to them by the Constitution? I know that's quaint.
The emergency with Canada, I think, is that they're sending us fentanyl, and we need to tariff them. We need to tariff the fentanyl, I guess, so that we can at least make some money off it. We get, but this one is just a national economic emergency. This is like, it turns out you can just do this. You remember the 2019 Democratic primary? There was maybe a week where people were asking candidates, I think I did too, hey, could the president just declare a climate emergency and use his new powers to do a bunch of stuff? And I think Jay Inslee said yes, and Bernie said yes, and no one else did anything. But you kind of can. You kind of can just do this, and you can only be stopped as president if Congress says, no, we're going to override this emergency. So it's every Democrat in the Senate, including Bernie. And Bernie's explained he was against trade relations with China. He's for tariffs in some cases. But he's not Sean Fain. He's not cheering this on. He's like, this is stupid. And also the other part of it Bernie says is, and this is authoritarianism. Like, the president should not have the power to do this. Congress should have the power to sign up on these tariffs. Congress gave it over to the president, not knowing that he would do this kind of crap with it. Is sort of the Bernie position. And that is shared by, it's every Democrat plus Bernie. And at Senate, I think 7 Republicans now. What would happen in the House for them to say, actually, we're not doing this emergency? It would be a majority of the House voting for what the Senate voted for last week and saying, yeah, we in Congress say this is not a real emergency, so it's over right now. The president needs to come back and ask us to do the tariffs. They totally can. Right now, the only thing stopping that is basically Mike Johnson. If Mike Johnson said there's a free vote on this, and Democrats would vote with a couple of Republicans and probably pass that in the House. So they could, and with the whole Trump national emergency, they also could do that. It's just that Republicans don't want to because they trust him, or they say they trust. I think when they say they trust him, I believe them. I generally think that the secret stuff they say off the record to reporters is bullshit, and the stuff they say in public when they're afraid their constituents is real. I think Johnson believes this. Johnson thinks Trump is a world historical genius who's been saying this about tariffs for generations. Let's just let him try. No one's ever tried this. True MAGA art of the deal has never been tried. We're going to do it. But you could put the votes together to end this. If it was such a disaster that it's clearly like prices are going up and the iPhone's $5,000 and everyone's sick of this, Congress could act. But after months and months of saying, no, we trust him. They have the power. It's like one of the many powers they're just not grabbing onto.
I mean, but like this has been the trend in foreign policy for like as long as I've been alive. And I just think it's interesting that like the imperial presidency and like the war making powers, I mean that's long gone. But now when it comes to things like tariffs and economic policy, it's telling to me that Congress is willing to just give that up too. And this is like the Yeltsinification of America. I mean, like it seems like we're doing to our own country what we did after the Soviet Union collapsed.
Dave, the dynamic with Johnson and like Republican legislators in general, it does seem to be sort of like an extension of that 2016 thing we saw right up until the midterms with Trump. That's just been amplified this time because they finally won the popular vote of like, okay, this guy was able to do all these things that were previously like impossible in the post like W or even during W era of Republican politics. Therefore, anything he says that people say is stupid, especially if it is, just generally the media or everyone is calling it stupid. Therefore, all of that is going to work out too.
Yeah.
And that we're secretly furious with him. Where have I heard that before?
Oh yeah, I don't take that seriously. And people say they're secretly furious. I think talking to Republicans, some of them look at Javier Milei in Argentina, and that's the model. They say this guy cracked it, Bukele cracked it. These guys who come in and the media hates them, they say they're terrible. Actually, you need to break things real fast, and the neoliberals are going to be angry. The socialists are going to be angry. You just need to do it. But then they'll point to other just stuff Trump did that there wasn't a huge backlash for. And one I've heard bring up, which is not that relevant, but I see why they bring it up, is when he moved the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, all these experts said it was going to lead to disaster, and actually it was fine. And those are his instincts. People say, you can't do this, and he does it, and it works. So this one, just like those, it's going to work. I've heard that from more than one Republican. The media, you guys always get hyperventilating, and you always get crazy, and then he's right all along. Except you can start listening, but sir, actually, they don't care. They remember the ones that he was right about.
Yeah, I mean, like it is again the Brennanness of it all. Any victory, no matter how slim or whatever, no matter the circumstances of it, is always a total vindication for us doing things the exact way we want to do them. Whether that is, Biden is completely fine. No, he doesn't have a PhD in foreign affairs. He's just that fucking good. Or just whatever the fuck this is.
Dave, like to your point about the hysteria, the panicking, the media freak out. There was a Trump post this morning that states, the United States has a chance to do something that should have been done decades ago. Don't be weak. Don't be stupid. Don't be a panicking. New party based on weak and stupid people. Be strong, courageous, and patient, and greatness will be the result. Now, look, whether the stock market, because, you'll often hear less than 50% of Americans are invested in the stock market, whether the stock market is, the perfect indicator of how healthy or well off the country is, or whether people are suffering or not, is open for debate. But what puzzles me is this idea about there goes the media and politicians panicking again about a 10-point drop in the stock market. I mean, this doesn't seem out of the wheelhouse of things that politicians and the media might be concerned about or might be somewhat concerned with, right? Like the thought of a massive economic contraction.
No, they do care about financial news. They don't care about other news. So the media panics about deportations. They don't care about that. Like they're going to get some bad headlines in the New York Times, whatever.
That's a good example. People will get angry about it, but something an economic collapse is that is a thing that within politicians, sort of the sphere of things that they care about or feel empathetic for.
Yeah.
Will, it's almost like they have flattened just everything into articles. And so an article that's the S&P 500 has dropped 15% over the weekend is the same thing as an article that's Sydney Sweeney's uncle voted for Trump. And it's that's just gay article shit no one cares about. It's no, those are two different things.
Oh yeah, completely. And you knew things were getting bad when people started to post charts. The same people we're talking about. They're actually, over the last 50 years, if you invested your money in the Dow, it's going fine. And the media wants you to freak out, but the media told you to freak out about global cooling. Remember that? There's an inexhaustible treasure chest of stuff to go into and say the media was wrong. And yeah, it was wrong about some stuff. It's just in the moment right now, every time they do that, it's but how are you going to bring the factory back and employ the former Department of Education workers? It's the media was wrong about Trump in the past. They're very bad at explaining how this is supposed to work. Moving the embassy to Jerusalem, there's going to be an embassy in Jerusalem. I get that. Then there's a building there and it has Trump's name on it and you're done. This one, I don't understand. And they really are kind of buffaloing their past every question by saying, well, he was right before. Because everyone who's fair is he said something that we said was not going to work and it worked. Point taken. What about the current thing that you're trying to do? They divert again. Yeah.
No one remembers anything that was more than 18 months ago, obviously. But I mean, the whole thing during Trump 1, and actually the pitch for Trump 2 this time, during the summer was, remember how good the stock market was.
That's true. Yeah.
Which, now I guess just like everyone who has any money in equities or bonds is the fucking monopoly guy. Let's kill them. But they have boxed themselves into this position though, where the only way they can point to this in the future and go, the media was wrong about that, is two outcomes. One is if the entire world is like, okay, negative 58% tariffs on American goods. We will pay you to buy our stuff. You'll get cash back for purchases from the EU. The other way is if in most generously 14 months, we have a manufacturing sector that someone could work in a manufacturing job with an associate's degree, buy a house in a major American city, and it employs 75 million Americans, and we build it all in 11 months.
It's Operation Warp Speed for like Mao's 5-year plans. We're doing it in a fraction of that time.
I just saw a YouTube about how to make pig iron in your yard. I'm really excited to do that.
I mean, Dave, like we've talked a lot about the difference between the Trump 1 and Trump 2 administration. And I think like a big difference is the fact I think psychologically he has been changed a little bit by being prosecuted in the years in which he was not president. And I think he has like revenge on his mind. And I think he's become the damn Joker. I think that he wants to extract as much pain as possible from an American ruling class that he feels abandoned, betrayed, and, unjustly prosecuted him. And I think like if there is a, legible motive behind this trade scheme, it's to like basically set up a giant global protection racket to like extract concessions from foreign countries and American businesses who want carve outs for these tariffs.
Yeah. The Russia comparison, I'm so traumatized by terrible Russia comparisons for like the first Trump term, but that one actually works. If you just separate what Trump's doing from any historical context, you might say, yeah, well, why does the strongest country just demand more and more and jawbone people and get the best deal possible? How come he doesn't just bring people to the White House and say, what are you going to do for me? And then they do it. It's like, well, because then you just have the law of the jungle at all times instead of the system that's like slow and creaky, but generally people are not fretting if they've kissed the wrong ring that they're not going to be able to trade in the country anymore, to come to the country. They write an op-ed, they could get deported. They get like, there's all sorts of things you can do to scare people into acting. And it's now the lib take to say that's maybe less good than just having some system of laws where you don't worry about it all the time. But the Trump offer really is, this is our Caesar and he gets to do this and everyone is afraid of him. So we'll blow up a deal one day and bring it back the next one. And you better be nice to him in the interim. That's why I think all the people on the left I cover are very happy saying, look, if President Sanders was doing this, there'd be a Capitol strike and he'd be stopped immediately. But the same people on CNBC would have some understanding. Oh, that's right. If somebody is assuming absolute power for themselves and demanding you cut individual deals, that's bad. You should have some sort of predictable regimen where like you can make your planning out a couple of years in advance and not worry that the president will get revenge on you. Having the president get revenge on you whenever he feels like it. Everyone who covered the last iterations of Republican policies, like we need predictable tax policies, people know invest. This is the least predictable thing ever. So he just decided with several law firms, like, you were mean to me, but you met with me in the office and cried, therefore I'm going to give you a deal. What? I guess I can try that with every company. You don't want to. You can hire a lobbyist, I guess. You can hire lobbyists to, like the schools have done, law firms have done, to kind of negotiate, but not everyone can. This is just way worse if you're the kind of person who is never going to have that level of power and never have that interaction. You don't know how to, and you're also aware, like, things change, and in 3.5 years, it would suck if a Democratic president started doing revenge. Like, much better. As much as everyone hates the uniparty, like, just having a system of laws that is kind of the same between administrations, and a system of tariffs that's kind of predictable. That's what everyone built their businesses based on, right? That's like getting rid of that for a few years for Trump. That's what's starting to scare people. Oh, what comes after that? Yeah, well, like 1997 Moscow comes after that.
Yeah, and how could you ever really make a deal with America ever again if it's not going to last more than like 2 years? I mean, and like, I think that's an important point. The idea that like people are afraid of him. People have tried to intellectualize all of this, but really, I think about that response to the article about that poor German guy, that green card holder that just got randomly fucking brutalized in the federal detention center, and how I saw that reply from a leathery MAGA crone that was like, good, now it's our turn. Like she's just hated this German guy for her entire fucking life. But it is, I think a lot of them like this because it's like, yeah, they are afraid of him, but it's kind of, there's a difference between being afraid of John Wick and being afraid of like a guy whose dick is out and his sweatpants have shit stains on him, but he has a gun in the supermarket. Yeah, you don't know what he's going to do.
Both are pretty frightening.
Both are frightening, but like with John Wick, it's like, okay, he wants something.
Yeah,
He's
don't
trying
kill
to
his
survive.
dog.
Yeah, with the guy with his dick out in the shotgun, it's like, what could I even do here? What's the point of this?
Well, one of the last justifications for the tariffs that definitely get into like just the world of spite, really more than anything else, is I really like the sort of the Groyper reaction to the tariffs, which is like, well, I don't have anything or a future to begin with, so I don't care if anyone else does. But crucially, the point of the tariffs is to get rid of all female jobs. Like I've seen that video of the Australian marketing team dancing in their office more times in the like as the economy like crashes. I've seen that video probably a dozen times in the last couple days, and it's like I guess this is what they're offering. Like, I think there's a belief that like that women in the workplace only have fake jobs, and that like the jobs are fake, but I should have them personally.
Yeah, the guys who post that video and like, are like, this is why work sucks now. It's always a guy who like sells an ebook about how to do jumping jacks.
No, but one of the guys literally hosts a nutrition podcast. Yeah. That is the most female-coded job you could possibly have.
I am so fucking sick of seeing that goddamn fucking video. It's been 3 years. They work at an Australian skincare company. How would any of these people find themselves in that position? Their mom has been asking them to like apply to the cafe near their house, and they're gonna go to another continent.
Didn't we used to be able to get these in America? Because the thing that pissed people off before, these guys pissed off before, was like, this is my life at Lockheed Martin, where they go to the office and they get on a Zoom at 9 a.m. and it's really easy. Then they go to the mental health brunch. But we used to make those in America. Now we have to get these in Australia. What happened? There used to be like 20 bullshit companies where you can make these videos where a woman had a job, strike one, and two did a bunch of nonsense work, strike two. Meanwhile, some guy with a Herbalife stock was at home getting angry. But they used to get angry at Americans. Why Australia now?
Half the U.S. workforce are women. So the idea here is that like at a time of like economic contraction, let's get rid of half of the workforce. And then, like, the other half will, who previously were doing bullshit jobs, will just go back to the mines. And they'll love doing it. They'll be happy doing it. And it's just like, I don't know, like, this is like the more the philosophical tenor to, like, what does this portend for the future? I guess I'm, like, a little surprised and a little impressed by the number of people who are just like, no, like, yeah, like, we're going back to the 19th century and we'll all be happier for it. Like, measles is back, too. Sure, but, like, what meaning does life really hold anyway? If you value your own life, you die a dog's death.
Hard times create strong men. Just keep repeating that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, keep repeating that yourself until you feel strong.
It just like Dave's point about those hilarious videos during, it was like the first like year or 2 years of Brandon, where you saw those hilarious TikTok videos where someone's like, I'm on McKinsey's, public school closure team. This is what my day is like. And like half the time they're doing like Zumba or whatever the fuck that class is called. I always thought that was so funny because there's this fetishization of like the Mad Men thing where you go to your finance or advertising or whatever the fuck job and you do one meeting where you're like Don Draper, you knock it out of the park, and then you're just drinking and fucking the rest of the day. And it's the same amount of work as these videos.
Yes,
but it's
absolutely.
It's not cool enough though. So it sucks, and we have to kill the economy.
It's like, Felix, one of my favorite details of the film American Psycho is that it never portrays a single person doing work of any kind.
Yes. Yes. That the thing in the book too, there isn't even a second. It's not like Bonfire of the Vanities where there's like some Bond deal going on in the background. They're just, it's like how Tony Soprano always talks about how hard he works. And you just cut to him in the pork store bullshitting. But, you know, like anything, bullshitting at your job and never doing any actual work, it can be male coded or female coded.
All these guys, like the all-in guys, are this long-term psyop to get people finally ready to accept voting for a socialist, because all of them, they made their money on something. They got very lucky at some point in the free money era. None of the products they're involved in are useful in any way. Didn't David Sachs do like a worse version of like Twitter Spaces?
Yeah. Clubhouse.
But none of these, if you describe them to like a World War II veteran, hey buddy, do you want your son creating a video chat app? He'd be like, get out of here, homo, or whatever they would say. It was 1945. They talk differently. But none of these are real jobs, and they're the ones lecturing you. Like you're gonna live in the pod. You're gonna eat the bugs. I'm gonna just be on a 7-hour podcast talking about wine. And maybe one day, if you eat enough bugs, you can be on the podcast. Like I don't know what their offer is to people, apart from they got rich and you have to suffer to build character.
Yeah, like the All In podcast is, I mean, I hope that should be in the Library of Congress. It is one of the most important cultural products of this, 5-year stretch. All these guys who have so much free time, they could create a podcast where they call each other the besties. Some of the least charismatic men ever. No one should be telling these guys to do more media. And it's a podcast about like poker and fucking work. And yeah, the core message is like this group of 5'5" SPAC scammers and Epstein associates is calling you a fucking weak loser because you haven't like popped 4 discs at your job.
Just before we move on from the Gen Z boss in the mini video, a conservative on my feed pointed out that those 5 women are running a firm engaged in domestic materials manufacturing.
That's a real thing, right?
Like that, they are like a hand cream or like thing, but all their products are made domestically, presumably at some kind of factory in Australia. Like, is that not what we are trying to build here?
Yeah. That's much better than another crypto exchange or something.
Yeah. That is what that looks like. Those are the people who are running those firms.
So it's just like the Simpsons episode with the gay steel mill that Homer goes to. Yeah. And that's the lesson I took from that episode of The Simpsons. It's like, that's real work.
Oh, my son doesn't stand a chance. The whole world's gone gay. Oh my God, what's happening now?
We work hard. We play hard.
Dave, I did say I want to get to like the Democratic side of this equation, because you were just in Wisconsin reporting on the Supreme Court election and Elon's sort of parachuting into that race and with the effects it may have had on the outcome. But I want to talk more broadly about like Democrats are looking forward to the midterm and to 2028, obviously, but it seems like there was just a big like the hands-off protests over the weekend. It seems like there's a lot of anger at what the Trump administration is doing. But like, I have a strong feeling that like, if you were a Democrat prior to the tariffs and the stock market dip, like your inclination, I think among Democratic leadership was just basically to like sit back and let Trump hang himself. And whatever he does to the economy, the Democrats want to keep their hands as far away from it. And they want to come back with like the kind of, I told you so message. Like, Given the results of Wisconsin, like, do you think that strategy for the Democrats, like, it seems to me like the perfect opportunity if you were inclined to that, like, sort of leadership, that like this would be the perfect time to just basically just be like, just let him do what he wants, and and it's going to destroy the economy, and people are going to get pissed off, and we're going to be back into packing power in a couple years.
Oh, yeah, what they did in Wisconsin was a little bit different. It definitely went harder than what Schumer is talking about, because we're not getting too into the weeds, but Wisconsin has this campaign finance system where people can give infinite money to the state party, and Ben Wickler has used that for Reid Hoffman to give money to the party. So part of this is Democrats need to be willing to accept billionaires' money. But the argument in Wisconsin was basically pitchfork populist stuff, that Elon Musk has no right to be here telling us what to do. He's spending all this money for his own personal benefit because he wants the Tesla dealerships in Wisconsin. this judge that he's campaigning for is his puppet, and they're going to do whatever he says. It was much more pick a target and polarize it and beat up this guy for being rich and thinking he's better than us than like Chuck Schumer would advise, and it was very successful. I was there when the Democrats were they were optimistic, but they were thinking this is going to be a slog. Maybe it's a single digit race, and they blew it out everywhere just because that I was surprised at how powerful that was. You'd think after enough elections with Trump in it, people would compartmentalize and say, well, maybe rich people can do something for us. But that pissed off Wisconsin so much. The idea that Elon showed up with no knowledge of what the state was focused on, just kept saying activist judges, didn't know what cases he was talking about. And his rally there, where he had what's his face, Sean Duffy, the guy who replaced Pete Buttigieg,
transportation secretary.
Yeah.
Catherine's former neighbor, actually.
Oh, he was? Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. Same neighborhood.
But he was saying at this rally, like, Wisconsin's going to show the world you don't mess with Doge. You had Wisconsin saying, is that no? Why would we? I don't care about that. Like, I'd like there to be a judge who rules on like the 5 or 6 cases that are relevant to me in the Supreme Court. Where'd this come from? It really was offensive to people.
Yeah, I think that people expected sort of like it to be sort of like the Scott Walker recall thing, right? Where there was people, maybe they thought of it as a wash. Well, everyone's coming with out-of-state stuff. But really, it's just no one seems like more of an outsider than this fucking guy. What I thought was maybe even more interesting than the blowout in the race that Elon was most intimately involved with was, I mean, you alluded to it. It's not like it was closer in races he wasn't personally involved in. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a really shitty night for the Republicans in Wisconsin. None of the key races seemed close at all. I mean, it was the Supreme Court race. It ended up being, like 10 points at last count. But the other big race, the GOP lost it by like 7 or 8 last time I checked. I mean, I would say that augurs worse. Because it does seem like Elon is sort of inching away now. He came out against the man who taught me economics, Peter Navarro. And it just, you can get rid of him, or more likely he will initiate the breakaway because you just made the most important parts of his actual revenue producing businesses 50 to 400% more expensive. But people still fucking hate this entire deal, it seems.
Yeah, it was an easy thing to explain to people. And that race, it was the education superintendent race where Republicans were supporting a more pro-voucher candidate, but she was taking advantage of how there are problems in the Milwaukee school district and the incumbent Democrat wasn't very popular. It didn't matter just because all these Democrats came out and were furious about Elon, because each of these until the next presidential, every race is some fraction of people who voted in the presidential election. And what Republicans their theory was, if we just get a big fraction of those MAGA voters from last time, the guy Scott Pressler found and registered, if we get them out, like a third of them come out, we can win everything. And they got them out, and they lost because Democrats found even more people without their own 6'7" guy in cowboy boots going around to every county and personally asking to vote. Like, they had it all because Elon got the credit, but or blame at the end. But yeah, Turning Point Action was there, and I talked to them during the race, and their whole thing was, "We're turn the key. We're not leaving the state. We just want it for Trump. We're going to go back there. We're going to find every Trump voter and get him pissed off." And they just weren't as pissed off about things as Democrats were, or just independents who vote Democrats were. They were supposed to be pissed off that because I was there when Don Jr. was campaigning for this judicial candidate. He was linking it to these elitist judges in the middle of nowhere think that they can stop the president from deporting people, and we're going to show them they can. And there were some Republicans who cared about that, but there were far more Democrats who were like, "Oh my God, everything I care about is melting down, and I have one chance to stop Elon from doing it. I'm going to take that chance." It was much more powerful.
Yeah, I think with like the Democratic success in like getting not like people who maybe wouldn't vote in just a control group midterm, if that concept even exists.
Yeah.
You see the most dramatic outcome here with like, Elon's proximity, obviously. But even without him, I think like the galvanizing sentiment isn't necessarily like they're coming into our home and, throwing money around and telling us what to do. It's kind of this ethos that it is an Elon thing, but it goes beyond him, which is a lot of fucking people work for the federal government. It is one of the largest middle-class employers in the entire fucking country. And when people are like, people who voted for them are like, well, I'm scared. Like, am I going to be fired? Am I going to lose my house? The response of Elon, but also just like Vance and like the administration in general is like, you're a fucking idiot for even thinking that.
JD Vance said the other day that 40% of the people who call the Social Security Administration are committing fraud. Are trying to defraud Social Security.
It doesn't help to directly call your potential or even most recent voters a bunch of fucking idiots and fraudsters and liars.
No, it was the All In guys who got Lutnick to say that, because they were doing their interviews in DC, and that was the first time Lutnick flew that balloon. Actually, if my grandmother doesn't get a Social Security check,
yeah, no shit, your grandmother probably has a ton of money. She's sitting on a ton of money. She's not going to cry if she misses a check every other month. Yeah, I think she'd be all right, Howard.
The first I've heard this data point, like, you know who actually loves to call the government to do fraud or fraudsters? They're the ones who first they tip the fake check, and then they call, and I guess they do like an old lady voice and say, yes, I need more money, sir. The Social Security number is like, I didn't know this is a problem. I knew. Are there some people who rip off the government? Yeah, I've seen movies. Like I saw Superman 3. I know there's ways to rip off people, but they all turned to this storyline immediately. That actually most of the money being, or 40%, of the money being spent is on fraudulent checks going out to people. All of this, I go back to the election promise from Trump was not you will have to sacrifice anything at all. It was going to be that everything was going to be back to 2019 levels. You were going to have more money in every capacity. You're going to have more jobs. We're going to have cheaper oil. I think cheaper oil might happen because of lack of demand.
yeah.
But none of it was, and we'll have to sacrifice you people for this in the short term to make things better. So that's whenever, I think, even as popular as Trump kind of is now, that voter who was excited to vote for him in 2024 and never voted again, why would they come back? You told them they would have a golden age right now. You told them they'd have peace with Ukraine right now for day one. If you cared about Israel, there was a Gaza ceasefire, but not really. There's all these Trump promises that are not coming true, so they're kind of blaming people for not being happy enough.
And if you're skeptical or even asking questions, going, "Where's the jobs? Where's my money? Where's the global peace and prosperity?" The response is, "You're a fucking piece of shit who's trying to steal from us."
Yeah, you're doing fraud. Probably we have to look into you. Maybe you wrote an op-ed we don't like.
Yeah,
Dave, I think there's an emerging political formulation in the type of voter that you're describing here that I think could be summed up the Barstool Republican, because like that was kind of a thing when they were for Trump. But Dave Portnoy's going on streams now, and he's saying the president shouldn't even be golfing when the stock market crashes, and he's saying they shouldn't be on a Signal chat. So like there's an emerging political formation of young men who voted for Trump because they wanted the money, but now the money has been touched and nobody's getting the money.
That is a real constituency. But when you think about these young men who were pivotal for Trump, this has probably been overcovered and overrated. The number of men who grew up in the 90s and they were promised a different offer, and now they've had to watch all the commercials have too many women in them, too many interracial. There's this whole there's a storyline about the young men being left out of this prosperity, and I think that's not crazy. I mean, I know people who at various points invested in GameStop or invested in Bitcoin, or something, thinking, look, there's going to be some way out of this rat race. I'm going to find my 1849 oil, gold rush moment. You're not going to take it from me. I get that. That's pretty powerful. But those people who are not getting it right now in any way, there's nothing those people hoped would happen that Trump said on Joe Rogan or what have you, that he's pulled off. I'm trying to think of something Trump said. This is going to be better. Right? If you really, really hated DEI programs, you didn't want your office to have which I understand because they're like an hour and they're annoying. There's some stuff that he took away, but nothing that got added. The idea that the total prosperity did not come back. And if you're reporting, you're like, make the culture war stuff go away so I can make more money. Well, he made the culture war stuff go away, in sort of. but you're not. He's isn't that the Portnoy thing? He's lost like $10 million from his portfolio.
Yeah, he's lost like $20 million over the last 4 days. Yeah.
I mean, if you are
maybe
like
you bet on Duke. I don't know.
if you're a Zillennial who feels like there is no equivalent to like the real estate bounty or the wage growth that boomers saw, the thing you can point to is that now white shoe law firms have to take on anti-Semitism cases pro bono. So if you have one of those, if you want to sue Columbia, you can do it for free.
Yeah, you can make other people heard, but then what do you get out of it? Like Paul Weiss took this deal with Trump, but it was just him in the Oval Office for 3 hours talking about golf and then cutting a deal. You didn't get anything from that. You were like even the Bitcoin reserve is something that I think that sort of guy heard about during not the election, but in the interregnum. Oh, this is going to be great. I've had this crypto. I've been sitting on it. It's going up a little bit, but he's going to break down the walls, and we're going to buy crypto, and that's my ticket. It was like the Iraq dinar all over again. And what was the Bitcoin reserve? It was just the government took a bunch of crypto from like crimes. The FBI has, and we're going to put it in one place now, and that's it. We're not going to give restitution. That's not what you wanted. You wanted the government to buy your bag, so you'd have more stuff, and they didn't do that.
I totally agree with you. By the way, that the concept of like the overwhelming youth support for Trump is like, to say the very least, like overblown. I think it is. It was an attractive story for people to write articles and do TV segments about, but I really don't think it's like quite the phenomenon people thought it was. I mean, it does all kind of go back to the way this election was characterized, which was as like a 2008 style blowout, which I really do not think it was. But if there is any Trump constituency that is kind of like that, it is young men in professional positions who begrudgingly had to participate like in the liberal world. We talked about this on Panic World, but it is someone who like they make a pretty good living as like a consultant or a lawyer or whatever the fuck, but their company posted a black square. And they have this like stinging humiliation that they had to like match the background radiation of the dominant liberal culture. But there's like, okay, once you get rid of that, there's nothing to be against. There's nothing to fight against. And now like you cannot get a Switch or an iPhone. So like what now? I don't think the Democrats pick those guys up. Those guys just go back to not voting, which I'm not even sure they were that statistically significant of a group to begin with.
Yeah, this came up in some other stuff I did last week where Democrats they're all cooperating with the campaign tell-alls, and they were saying, we heard a little this in 2024.
and giving like, 12 anonymous sources to tell a journalist, I think maybe Biden was a little too old to run for president.
Oh, yeah.
Glad you're protected by anonymity for that gem.
That's the first thing, and they're kind of splitting between we never could have won or we could have won had Biden dropped out earlier. But one thing that came up in Fight, which is the Amy Parnes, John Allen book, is they do focus groups for Harris, and they talk to young men, especially young black men, about Trump's economic record, and they're like, well, he gave us a stimulus check, and his name was on it, and he might do that again. And Democrats try to say, yeah, but we in the House we funded that. They'd say, I don't know, Trump's name was on the check, and I'm obsessed with this idea of the Doge dividend check, which I wrote about like a month ago. Another Trump fan said, if there's enough money savings from Doge, everyone should get a check, and that would be that was already in the bloodstream of Fox, and I don't know about all these podcasts, but I've heard that anecdotally out in the real world too, of people thinking there's going to be a Doge check. This actually at Elon's rally in Green Bay, one of the questions is a woman saying, "When can we expect the Doge check?" So there were people just literally thinking Trump is going to paper over their problems with free money. He's going to make their investments go up, and he's going to give them free money. And yeah, that's the kind of person, like Felix is saying. Why would they come back? Why would they vote in a midterm for someone else when that didn't happen?
Dave, I mean, like, I wonder if the Democrats will learn a lesson from this, because, one thing that does help paper over a lot of personal and certainly financial problems, it's getting free money. It's getting a nice check for doing nothing. And I guess, like, this is where I was going with the question about, like, the hands-off movement and, like, what the Democrats, like, is there a political formation or agenda in the Democratic Party right now that's going to become a container for the anger and fear that people have about losing their job, getting laid off, or, just the cuts and assaults on civil liberties that the Trump administration is doing. Because, like, on the one hand, you have like the sort of Bernie AOC fight back against the oligarchy. Then you have the Ezra Klein, Derek Thompson, the abundance agenda, the sort of like NIMBY neoliberal technocratic agenda. And then you have the House leader, like like Jeffries and Schumer, who's, as I was trying to say, like their attitude just seems to be like, let him destroy as much as the country as he can, and like people will get fed up, and we won't really even have to run for re-election. But like, Dave, like, is there a political agenda, or, like I said, container that the Democrats are going to offer that will like speak to the anger and frustration that people feel and like are being manifested now? And like I said, these protests that we saw over the weekend.
Yeah, they're not totally there yet. The whole wait for him to screw up attitude, that is the Schumer attitude, but other Democrats, they saw the reaction to Schumer. Schumer's crazy unpopular now. Or I talk to candidates for Senate, and they often say they can't support him. He can do that, but that's sort of the job of the leader to just eat dirt when everyone else is coming up with something. The Sanders AOC pitch at their rallies, those are the ones in Denver, but it was kind of the same speech everywhere. It's actually, I wouldn't say it's not to the right of Bernie 2020, 2016. It's just boiled it down a lot more. So it's not saying here is all the stuff that specifically I'm going to do, and we get the parliamentarian to rule this is in order. Yeah, it's more, these guys are showing that they want, if left to their own devices, they would redirect all of our resources for tax cuts for themselves. Instead of those tax cuts, we spend trillions of dollars on healthcare, on childcare, on all of your basic needs, so you don't need to worry all the time. And it is repackaging populism as we've seen what they would do with power. What if we took the power and grabbed it with the same ferocity and just started shoveling money back to you? And like, money you earn. That's also part of it. The rhetoric is you paid for Social Security, and they're going to try to screw you over so they can give these guys tax cuts. And that, Democrats are pretty comfortable with that messaging. I've not seen, even the real kind of Eeyores like the Fettermans are not saying that sucks. He will complain that they're talking too much about resistance, but he's not saying stop talking about opposing tax cuts. They're all very happy to do that. But the fight is really not there yet. It's just compared to 2019 or even 17. At this point in 17, Bernie was getting Democrats on board with his Medicare for All bill. Like, we know how it ended. A lot of them didn't mean it. They just got on. But the conversation was moving in his direction, and he, AOC, et cetera, are all trying to get it back. Just like, look, we now have a vision. Like, every time you want people to think of the opposite of social democracy, it's the Trump inauguration with the richest, most unlikable people in the world all standing behind Trump. That's the opposite of what we're going to do. So they're like, we are now the antithesis of that, and that's something it makes sense as a campaign message. It doesn't have much meat on it yet.
Yeah, it does seem like they are doing what the Democratic Party would do if it were a full-time opposition party, which is trying to create a permanent set of enemies out of these policies, which is, I mean, you would do that if you wanted to keep the party going, but I haven't heard a lot from Fetterman or even, who's that short one? Jared something?
Jared Moskowitz?
No. He's or Josh Gottheimer. That's what.
Oh, that guy, New Jersey. Yeah, New Jersey.
Yeah, New Jersey.
He's running for governor of New Jersey.
Yeah,
but he's running for governor as the tax cut candidate, but as the Democratic tax cut candidate whose ads are all Republicans suck and they're trying to rip you off, and I want to give you your money back. Even him, in a tight race, or I guess a primary, he's not running as let's go back to moderation. He's running on Elon suck. They all agree on Elon sucking. That is actually kind of unifying. It's their version of the Australian dance video.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I guess I kind of understand the guys who get mad at the Australian office workers, because when I saw Elon Musk put that cheese head on, and when I see him jump around spaz out on stage, like, I have a visceral nausea as well.
I mean, it really does show how strong negative polarization has gotten, because, like, if this was a public figure during the Bush administration, he would be everyone would hate him. Like, Bush would be like, I don't want that guy around. It would be a famous press conference moment. But now, like, if you make fun of him like the cruelest people that are like posting videos of like moms crying in deportation centers. Like if you post a video of him like making the X with his body and his fucking gut poking out, these people will go, he has autism and likes letters.
Yes, exactly. Like, he's done so much for the world and faces so much cruelty. And then everything else on their feed is like, check out this awesome video of Yemenis getting annihilated by our military.
Yeah, the account, like, single moms dying is like, I can't believe how mean people are to this man with a brain problem.
By the way, it is funny at the moment where have you seen the news reports that like all of the renewed airstrikes on Yemen are like basically having no effect whatsoever? Keep in mind that the cover story for why they're doing this is to preserve the sanctity of global free trade. They're like, we have to protect free trade from the Houthis.
They have committed some pretty horrific crimes. They hit a wedding, which is a pretty popular U.S. move in Yemen throughout the years and across administrations. But I have seen a report that they're actually running out of munitions. During the first few phases of Operation Amazon Prime, Prosperity Guardian under Biden, one of the most insane things I ever saw was, you know how like in the past, fighters or bombers, they'll put like the targets they've hit on the side of their planes.
Yeah.
Like an Ace will have like some planes.
The Red Baron.
Yeah. Well, for the guys who were deployed for Prosperity Guardian, they would put a marker on their Hornets for every time they just fired a missile and didn't hit anything. They would fire a fucking $10 million cruise missile. Don't know where it went. Don't know what they fired it at. Didn't hit anything. Didn't accomplish anything. And they're like, put it on the plane. That's another one for me.
This is great inflation. This is everyone gets a trophy shit in the U.S. Navy.
Yeah. There's never going to be an American ace again. Or even maybe an American who hits a target. I don't know.
All right. Should we leave it there for today?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just one more thing about Yemen. I did see that they are planning on, or at least alluding to the fact that there are plans for a ground invasion, which is fucking, they're really speedrunning Bush too. Like, holy shit.
Another election promise delivered on.
Yeah.
I'm going to commit ground troops to a war with Yemen for unspecified reasons.
Yeah. Oh my God. Can you imagine the Jelly Roll concert they're going to have for the guys that die in Yemen?
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Oh, is that who that music is for? The Jelly Roll music? I could never figure that out. Every time I hear it, I'm perplexed.
Jelly Roll is kind of like, I mean, it will be for victims of the next American victims of the next U.S.-led war, but currently it's for guys who get addicted to something you can buy at a gas station and are like, I'm 9 hours sober. Can I get a retweet Jelly Roll?
I'm here to raise money from Freedom Awareness. Yeah. Okay. Now I get it now.
All right. Good luck with everyone's economic futures. That does it for today's show. Thanks again to Dave Weigel for joining us. You can follow Dave's reporting at Semafor.
That's right, and X. I'm Dave Bloomberg on X. Please follow me there.
All breaking financial news.
I just want to say that we are announcing season 3 of Movie Mindset, which will be coming back on April 23rd in just a little over 2 weeks. So keep an eye out for the schedule of what we will be showing for that season, and also where to stream or find or otherwise watch or rent all of the films. So that information should be up on the Patreon, I don't know, tomorrow, whenever I get a chance.
Yeah. Well, we've already recorded episode 1. Felix was Hassanai's guest, and you were not going to want to miss the season premiere of Movie Mindset, because we tackle a film that, unlike pretty much every other movie we've done on Movie Mindset, is probably the most referenced film in the Chapo canon.
Easily. I was so happy we got to talk about this one, and I really feel like we did it justice.
Oh, absolutely. I was really happy with it.
Yeah, I'm really excited for people to see it.
I remember when I first started editing the show, one of my friends who listened, when I told them, said that I should engage in a project of recreating this entire film just by references on the show, because he thought it would be possible.
All right. Well, everyone, keep your eyes peeled for Movie Mindset Season 3. That does it for today's show. Till next time, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.